Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And don't forget, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Okay, we've got Neill Ricketts. He's the ex-CEO of Versarien, chairman of the Versarien Economic Partnership. He's one of the country's leading lights in graphene, and we'll find out what he's been up to. And also, he's a brilliant Welshman, it goes without saying. Then we've got Geoff Burch. He's a motivational speaker. He's a TV presenter. He's the original business guru. He's the author of 6 books. I'm going to quickly rattle them off. The Way of the Dog, Irresistible Persuasion, Self-Made Me, Writing on the Wall, Resistance is Useless, Go It Alone. And I've got a couple of copies here as well. Okay, and we've got, last not least, we've got Patrick Chambers. He was last on the show in July when he took over as chairman of Gloucester City Football Club. He introduced the Gloucester Monster Burger. He hired the ex-England goalkeeper Tim Flowers as manager, and he gave him the boot last week. So we'll find out all about that. Thanks ever so much for joining us, guys. We're going to quickly find out what's making the headlines today, courtesy of the BBC. So we'll just rattle through these. It's a real mixed bag today. The Eye, interest rates have now hit peak, predicts economists. The Daily Telegraph, Sun Hunt, tax cuts are virtually impossible. The Daily Express, if Mr. Hunt says so, then it must be true. This is all about the tax cuts again. The Times, PM wants A-level reform to boost pupils' life skills. The Guardian, campaigns plan legal challenges to Sunak U-turn on green policies. And also, Murdoch ends the reign at Fox and News Corp. The Daily Mail, Starmer lets cat out the bag on Brexit betrayal. Says the Daily Mail. The Financial Times, end of an era as Murdoch hands reins of media empire to elder son. The Sun, BBC shame over flasher brand. The Metro drugs-free transplant revolution, and the Daily Star, save our spam. And if you're ever like me as an RAF chef, there's so many things that you could do with spam. Yeah, and they're eye-watering. Anyway, Neill, let's start with you today, please, sir. So what have you picked out from the papers?
Well, we've got, there's a lot going on today, Mark. We've got the King saying that we need to get together and sort out the climate change. We got Sunak saying that he's going to roll back the changes. I think it's a total disaster, to be honest. I think the one thing business needs is stability. And if you're a car manufacturer, I can assure you, you've probably got Sunak on speed dial this week because they've spent billions of pounds trying to catch up with Tesla. And now it looks like it was a bit of a waste of time. We've got Murdoch, as you've talked about, and I know everybody wants to have a chat about Murdoch later on. We've got interest rates. We've got, believe it or not, there is still a war going on in the Ukraine, but it's moving further and further back in the papers. We've got a tit-for-tat war going on, or predicted, with China. We've got a lack of industrial strategy in the Financial Times. More locally, the paper is dominated by people wanting houses but not wanting them in their backyard, which is always a common theme. The most important story I found was actually in the forest. You can't see it because of my background, my tiny kitchen, but £100 million being spent in the Forest of Dean on research into living under the water. Now, Gloucester might have a cathedral and Cheltenham might have its festival, but I can assure you that the Forest of Dean is the place where everything is going on. And this £100 million shows down in Tidnam that we have the ability to change the world. And don't forget, what goes on underneath the water is a precursor for what goes on when Elon Musk makes it to Mars. So the Forest of Dean, definitely a place to be. Excel in the news again. They're starting up engineering training. And then there's a big conversation about flooding as well. So that's a quick canter through all the things that I found.
Well, there's nothing left for anybody else now. You've gone.
I always get in first, Mark. You know that.
Well, there you go. Right, Geoff, what have you picked out then? What's really caught your eye?
Well, I read this excellent local thing called Punchline, And yes, what a marvelous magazine. There's two things from Punchline that particularly grabbed me. One was the shoplifter that was caught, and I remember the wonderful song "Fan Like Fanny," the frowsy nightclub queen, and the line, "She waltzes in the West End shops and waltzes out again between two cops." This chap was caught shoplifting in Waitrose, so good luck to him. I mean, a man of taste. He obviously got a little bit of pâté de foie and a bottle of Chablis. You know, he's not a sausage roll man, so good luck to him. The one piece that scared me in your magazine was apparently they've been flogging fake aircraft engine parts. You know, I mean, I've bought dodgy fake stuff off the internet, which has dropped to bits literally as I got it out the parcel. And I sit on row 54 by the bogs as I fly across the Atlantic, and I'm going to watch those engines with some trepidation. How can you buy counterfeit aeroplane parts? And yes, in the national papers, with all the Murdoch and everything else, the side thing that caught me is that they've sent a little satellite some hundreds of billions of miles to find this asteroid, which has got a chance of hitting Earth and turning us back to dinosaurs. And it's scooped up a lump as it whizzed past, and it's headed back. And at 3 o'clock this afternoon, this thing's going to land with a lump of asteroid that we can have a look at, to find out about the origin of man, and to also find out how to stop this thing hitting us in 50 years' time. So that's very jolly.
I always worry about when they bring stuff like that back from space.
Yes.
Because you never know what's in it. I mean, we just...
You know why? It's because you're old and festry and you remember Quatermass.
Well, that's very true.
Worried about what's going on. You should be more worried about what's going on already, Mark. I mean, we've got dodgy aircraft parts. We've got a war in Europe. We've got, we're sitting on the edge of a depression, and you're worried about a little bit of rock from outer space.
Well, hey, I worry about everything, and I worry about the Wales game as well.
But the thing is, when the thing climbs out of there, says, take me to your leader, nobody's going to know who the hell to take him to.
It definitely won't be Sunak, will it? Right, okay. Change his mind. What he's going to do. Anyway, let's go over to Patrick. Thanks ever so much for that, Geoff. Patrick, what have you picked out from us for the national press?
After all that good news, are we going to make it to 8:30? Are we still going to be here, or are we going to be sucked up into some vacuous asteroid? Although we've got till 3 o'clock, you said, didn't you?
Yeah.
So we might be all right. A very comprehensive roundup from Mr. Ricketts there. But I think that must have you must have read every single paper there, Neil.
He's a pro.
I was under strict instructions from Mark, to be honest. Last time I didn't buy any papers at all, and he gave me a good kicking after the show, to be honest. I wasn't going to take the chance this time. He actually came round my house, so I'm not taking the chance. I went out and bought every paper. Yes,
you'll be getting a VIP card from your local newsagents with that bunch.
I mean, it's hard to find the newsagents open, to be honest.
Unless he's the mystery Waitrose shoplifter.
Yeah, the Waitrose shoplifter. When we were chatting, off air, the national headline for me, it is Murdoch. We basically, although we're obviously different ages on this panel, there's none of us that haven't been touched, by his empire and by his influence. We were sort of debating, weren't we, offline, is just how much of the handover will really take place, and how many fingers will he keep on the tiller. But like I said, love him or loathe him, he probably has been one of the most influential people on the planet, in the bulk of our lifetimes. And it's quite staggering to think that even Fox News only started in 1996, which some of us would still see as not that long ago. But then you look at the domination he's had, particularly in the UK, the influence he's had here, never mind the States. It's a remarkable character, and one that I'm sure we'll all have opinions of. Locally, I guess we'll come to local bits later, will we, Mark?
Yeah, we will. But I'd just like to go back to Murdoch and actually kick it around the room a second, because You are right. He's one of the most influential characters and leading business people. Let's talk about the business side of it. Really,
phenomenal.
He started from the backwaters in Australia, and he built a media empire worth billions. He actually started Sky News, which revolutionized the news format for the country and for the world. And finally, without that, we wouldn't have Premier League football as well, because without Sky, we wouldn't have, all the billions and millions of pounds in the Premier League, and let alone the political clout he managed to wield, the power of his newspapers that he had, the Sun, the Times, in America as well, the Washington Post, I think he is, or the Washington Times.
But
so it really has been influential. Yes, Geoff, go on.
You're totemic of his demise. I mean, I think he's going before he was pushed, sort of thing. I think their time has come. I think it's for influencers like you on the internet. I mean, the social media, these little dodgy things like that are here. There's a sort of whole news program going on in Gloucestershire that's just been set up by you. There's probably thousands of those. That's all nibbling away at his empire. Fox News really shot their bolt with Trump. They regret building him up. No, they can't undo it. They let this monster out of the box. Newspaper readership's on the decline. Satellite TV's on the decline. These all, with Netflix and everything else. I think he's a man of his time. I mean, I think he's stepping down, but Fox News isn't the power that it was. The Sun isn't the power that it was. The shouty headline that it's the Sun that won it and all this sort of thing. I've got a 14-year-old lives with me, and it means nothing to him, any of that. Only what he sees on his influencers with TikTok, and that's the only world that means anything to him. And I mean, he's going to be tomorrow's leaders. That they're, we're just a group of smelly old men that sort of remember sort of watching 5 o'clock news on the telly and buying a newspaper. I just cannot imagine our 14-year-old ever buying a newspaper ever in his life, ever. But he might tune into a thing like this.
They think the Sun might disappear, don't they?
Hold on, guys, one at a time. Neil, let's go to you, and then back over to Patrick. Sorry, Neil.
I never buy a paper except for the show, so I do agree with you, Geoff. I mean, who watches the news now? It's spun to you every single day on your iPad or your iPhone or any other device that you're using. You don't need to go and chase the news anymore. And I've got to be honest, is this not a situation where I agree with you, Geoff? He's jumped before he's pushed. Is this not a case of the world kind of ganging up and getting their own back on him? Because we see that all the time now. The world is a very polarized place, and I would have thought that there's a lot of people would be quite happy for him to retire. I mean, he is in his 90s. I mean, he has had a good run at it, but
he's not going to be retiring. He's going to still have his hand on the tiller. I can't see him.
Yeah, but tiller of a sinking ship, though.
That's very true. Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, there's talk, isn't there, that the Sun newspaper might be one of the first to just go digital only. And if somebody suggested that even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you'd have laughed in their face, wouldn't you? But I suspect, the newspaper as we know it, we don't buy. I mean, I buy the non-league paper is the main paper that I buy, on a Sunday morning, because that is actually still the only place where you can see all of that information. But you've only got to look at the age group of the average non-league fan. There is a lot of a large amounts of old grumpy men that we still read that paper. But I think Fox News, though, is still the most watched news program in the States, and I think still probably worldwide. So I don't see that influence disappearing. I think the Donald Trump things is very relevant because, he's had an amazing, uncanny knack of backing the right horse, hasn't he? Politically, he switched sides in this country several times, hasn't he?
Well, he does. He changes the colour. He got Blair in.
Yeah,
he got Maggie out. All those sorts of things. Really,
he has, and maybe this time, he maybe back one. Which now, like you were saying, how does he get himself out of that situation? I don't think he can actually, can he? Not in the States, because they're so polarized. It's we think we're polarized in this country, but you look at the rednecks and there's a dangerous cauldron in the States.
On that point, Donald Trump's still in the papers. Still campaigning for the next run at being the president. I mean,
it's scary.
What is scary about that? It goes to show the power of social media. Let's be honest about it. The power of social media and the narrow bandwidth that some people view the world. A bit like you said about your 14-year-old, and our own kids, the way they view it in. We're lucky, if we have a young audience from this. Do they consume the news in the same way? No, they don't. But it's a very narrow viewpoint, and I worry that intellectually moving forward, will our youth be able to sort of understand the nuances of other people?
No, I mean he thinks Andrew Tate's a good guy.
Mark, I mean, God, my kids, they smash me on certain things. Their knowledge of IT and their ability around TikTok and stuff like that. But do they know about the world? That's the question.
That's exactly my point, really. Do they know the rest of do they yeah, anyway, that's a completely different show. Right, let's move on. Anyway, so we're going to go and talk about what's happening in your world, guys. So that's all the news coverage for now. I'm going to go to you, Patrick, first. I'm going to start off with you, actually, as chairman of Gloucester Football Club. I mean, we had a chat in June when you took over the club, and you introduced the Monster Burger. What I loved about and what you've done there is you've really commercialized it. Can we just touch on that? How you found the club, where we are now with it, and what was the situation for Tim Flowers? Did you fall for the big name?
Yeah, I think that was part of it. And obviously, last time I was on this show with you, I became sort of an accidental chairman of a football club. I had my 4 years at Hungerford Town, a small club in West Berkshire that's members owned. I was friends with the previous chairman at Gloucester City, had the opportunity to go in there and take over. We've got the opportunity of purchasing the freehold, which that's something we hope to trigger later in the season. When I found myself in a situation where I had to find a new manager and build a complete new squad, revert to a part-time model, yeah, I think you're probably spot on there. I think that there was a little bit of head turning. The fact that Tim Flowers, Premiership winner, England goalkeeper, very successful at Solihull Moors in the division above, had a tough time when he was at Barnet. The name, he's a winner, isn't he? And the fact that he was up for the challenge of coming into Gloucester City, moving to a part-time model where our players are part-time, not full-time. I was definitely swayed with that, but sadly, things on the pitch, we went the last 3 games without scoring a goal. We lost in my opinion, the worst team in our division at home, and they didn't have a single shot on target, so worked that one out, and we lost 1-0, a lone goal. And then we got dumped out of the cup last Saturday by a team the division below. Again, we didn't trouble their keeper, and we lost 3-0. So sadly, I had nowhere else to go. So Tim and I had a conversation on the Sunday morning, and I have to say, what a gentleman. Nobody wants to have that conversation, but it was agreed that we needed to move on. So move on we do. We brought back a very popular manager in Mike Cook, who joined Gloucester in similar circumstances back in the 2019-20 season, saved them from relegation, coming with his old team. And he's the right person for now, who we are. We are a part-time club. We do have a restricted budget. I want to build that. And he's actually quite happy with the squad that we've got. He doesn't see it as an overhaul, bit of tweaking. Maybe a couple of 3 will move out, a couple of 3 come in. maybe a couple of loans. But yeah, he's got. I mean, tomorrow we're away at Darlington, who sit one place beneath us. They're bottom of the league. We're second from bottom, but we're actually only 1 point from being out of the relegation zone. So I've acted with 37 games to go, not 17 to go, which is when Mike Cook came in last time. So it's a bit of a free hit for Mike away at Darlington on Saturday. And then maybe the saving grace of being dumped out of the cup last Saturday is that then we've got a weekend off. So Mike will actually have 2 full weeks to work with the squad, decide what he wants to do before we have our first home match against Chorley.
I mean, how many people? Yeah, I just like to bring Neill in. I don't know about you, but how many of us in business have left it too late to act? I thought, oh my God, I should have done that bloody months ago, and we've left it. Go on, Neill. What's your view?
I was going to say the opposite, actually. My experience. I'd be interested in Geoff's view on this. I mean, this no criticism at all, Patrick. I don't understand football for love and money. There's no part of it that I actually understand.
There's nothing you can understand,
especially the offside rule. But how many businesses would be able to survive in those circumstances where the manager changed in such this is a general view across the whole sport. It's creeping into rugby as well. I mean, that is the ultimate performance-driven kind of position, isn't it? I mean, you see it in Premiership, 0 to 0 in 6 games, and they walk away with a bit of a package. So I doubt anybody's all that worried. But I worry if that came into business, how many people would be actually fired almost immediately, because we just don't. My experience is that it takes a long time to actually get people rowing in the same direction, and ultimately success isn't instantaneous. So I'm really interested because it's a total difference to the business. And
I think Neill, maybe we should, and Geoff, we should all go to a match sometime.
Yeah, please do. I mean, can I just come back on that point?
Course,
I mean,
yes, of course.
I've also been in business all of my life. I had a huge business in the 90s in particular. And you're absolutely right. You build it, you put your trust in people, you educate them, you train them, you try and take them on the journey. As a business grows, sadly, we do leave some behind, and you do have to make some changes. But generally, it's done with a lot more time and thought process, and you can work on what you're going to do as a change. But in football, and I'm not a trigger happy chairman, and I had the same manager at Hungerford for 3 seasons, even though we did end up getting relegated, and he's still there today. But in football in particular, obviously you're very reliant on your match day income. That your main driver is that Saturday afternoon, getting as many people through the gate as possible, getting as many people to buy a burger as possible, to buy some pints as possible. That's spend per head. And we've done really well on that spend per head once somebody's in the ground. But we have to accept that the vast majority of those people that come to watch a team win. That's what they want. There's some that don't care, that come for the social aspect of it, but they're a minority still, particularly in football. And if crowds start to drop off and the descent from the stands gets worse and worse and worse, it becomes so toxic that financially, you could suddenly find your turnover down by 30%. Now, Neill, you imagine if in a 2-3 week period with no warning, any business that you've run in your career could drop off 30% in a matter of 21 days. And that's the reality of football. And then sponsors become disenchanted, so trying to find that new sponsor. I mean, look at some of the big clubs that have gone to the wall over the years. Macclesfield disappeared, Bury, lots of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very, very, very interesting, and I don't envy that. But you sounds like you're doing a great job. Very quickly, what's the crowd capacity there at
we can have up to 4,000. We're averaging at the moment around sort of the 900 mark.
Okay, and the price of a ticket, Patrick?
So for an adult on the gate, £16, £14 online. Concession on the gate, £12 or £10 online. So it's pretty good.
You'll be able to get a concession.
I hope so. I might be able to afford to go. I might even treat us all. Thanks ever so much for that, Patrick, being so open and honest about that as well. Okay, we're going to go well, let's go to you, Neill. Okay, let's find out what you've been up to, because I don't know if you know, Neill had a big fan base in China when he was CEO of Versarien. Everyone really loved tuning in over there. Neill, you're chairman of the Forest Dean Economic Partnership now. Well, you have been for a while. It's Forest and Dean, as you said, is going all guns blazing, isn't it?
Yeah. As I said, we're there's a lot going on, to be honest, from the very tip of the district right to the very top. We've got that deep project going on, as I talked about before. I mean, I could never imagine £100 million worth of investment flowing in from the US into Tiddenham. It's kind of quite staggering. And it's kind of very Elon Musk, as my colleague Ian Bean from the old G First LEP, which suffered a bit of football fatigue, I think. He's described it in that way, and I think it's fantastic, isn't it? I mean,
I don't think people have really woken up to how fundamentally important this could be.
This is 100 jobs and £100 million worth of funding. I mean, staggering. I mean, the whole of Gloucestershire would welcome that kind of input. Let alone one of the smaller districts. And that's not the only thing that's going on. There's absolutely tons of stuff going on. And I know you went to the FEP stakeholder. Unfortunately, I was up in Scotland, but it's thriving. And I look at the news, especially your front page, and it's all doom and gloom, and B&Q and Screwfix, their profits are down, and etc. But then I look at these other projects, and actually, do you know what? In the trenches, in the small business world, there's a lot of successes. And the local Longhope Business Park with Versarien's based, totally full. Struggling to find space for everyone. I was talking to someone the other day, absolutely just exactly the same.
And you got that chap from a really great entrepreneur moving in, buying Lydney Pallet Company as well.
That was one of the stories.
Yeah, great story. So hopefully
a day goes by when I don't find out about a fantastic business in Gloucestershire. So one of the fastest growing businesses is a guy imports grass from California and then sells it to Joe Public for their rabbits. I mean,
he doesn't smoke it.
No, he doesn't smoke it. No, in fact, it'd probably be.
I know somebody who imports grass. He's a friend of the shoplifter from.
he's just got 20 years, Geoff. That's a different bloke altogether. But
no, Neill, Nikki, my wife and I actually have done a little bit of house hunting in the Forest of Dean. So you're really giving it a good plug here. So maybe it is the area we should look at.
You come down, Patrick. I'll show you around. I tell you, one of the things. So one of the things that I hope to work on in the future is around affordable housing. So I don't know if anybody knows. I've got 7 kids, and 6 of mine. One's a stepson, and I can't see how they're going to be able to afford a house. Now, the Forest of Dean was an area of deprivation, still an area of deprivation. You cannot afford a house. So it was hard when I was a kid. I got on the property ladder. I struggled. We did the usual things. We didn't have new furniture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How hard is it now to be 20, 21 years old, looking to get on the property ladder?
No chance.
I'm gonna have to move you guys on. But Neill, you've been up and down. I know, flying in Scotland, a bit of business up there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for the last 2-3 years, I've been helping a company up in Scotland, a company called Gas Sensing Solutions. They make CO2 sensors. Got one here, actually. Probably won't be able to see it on the camera. I had to go up to this thing here. We take it for granted that the water we drink and the air we breathe is actually fresh. Well, I can tell you it isn't. So if you've been stuck in a room for longer than about 3 hours with a load of gas bags like you, Mark, then the air quality suffers considerably. And during COVID, what we found out is actually COVID was at its peak when we were trapped in those rooms. So there's been a big push to understand how good the air is that we're actually breathing. And especially if connected to this deep project, if we're under the water, we need to take absolute care of the food we're eating, the water we're drinking, and the air we're breathing. if we're to continue to survive, and that's what they do up there. So I was up at the University of Glasgow at a Bessemer Society dinner. Bessemer, if you don't know about it, was the founder of steel, but he stole the technology from a forester, the Mushet brothers, and well, he didn't actually steal it technically, but the guy couldn't afford the patent. But it's always a much better story. But there's lots going on up in Scotland as well. So
fantastic, fantastic to hear you looking, doing so well as well, mate, and looking great. Okay, right, Geoff. In fact, let's go over to you, sir. I mean, we've known each other quite a while, and I used to watch your programs. And apparently, Neill said that he actually went to a book signing once for you as well.
Yeah, wonderful.
So let's talk about the retail market at the moment, because Cheltenham itself seems to be doing quite well, isn't it? The promenade.
I mean, it's all this sort of reinvention of the high street thing. I've actually become wealthy over the past week by getting 50 quids from the BBC to spout about Wilco on every radio station in the country, because I'm on somebody's register as an expert, and having spouted on these things, I've deduced that business rates are just insane. The trouble is, you look at Wilco, and then you look at something like Toolstation, who can just rent a shed on Kingsditch, 2 members of staff, pay minimal rates, or even better, somebody who flogs stuff out of their attic and pays no rates at all. Or you have a big high street premises where if your business slows, you're paying the same massive rates. You've still got the same staff, same overhead. And I think if they don't kind of level the playing field, I think there's a big threat to the high street, really. I think, that there's this idea that we're going to have this cozy kind of Mediterranean high street where we just sit in the dappled sunlight in Northgate Street, whilst violinists play. We sip our chilled wine and then stroll into sort of shops where we buy hand woven baskets. It's a nice idea, and some of the derelict betting shops and charity shops will be converted into bijou residences. That's the kind of idea. But the chipboard shutters are going up faster than the wine bars are opening, and I think we need to get a grip of the unfairness that between the online businesses, the out of town businesses, and the high street, or we won't have a high street.
No, without a shadow of doubt. I also want to just quickly go. I'll bring you back in on that in a second, Neill. But before I do, I want to talk about your motivational speaking, because because you were famous for doing that as well. You toured the world, talk to Apple and all these people, hundreds of
sure. I still do it. I still gambol around the world. No, I still gambol around the world a bit. But first of all, there's this massive outpouring of people who watch what I did and think, oh, that's easy, I'll do it. I had some prat ring me up and say, Geoff, I won't get out of bed for less than £5,000. He spends a lot of time in bed. And the other thing is to put on a conference for a company. It's like, I don't know, I think the big hotels charge 350 quid for 24 hours. So if you've got 1,000 staff, you're looking at £350,000 before you've even paid my eye-watering fees. So I think a lot of people are sharpening their pencils and looking at cutting back. So the big, massive annual conference. But from my point of view, what's happening is, and it's been a surprise to me, is that I'm doing a lot of workshops. People have realized that they've got these graduates, whether they're lawyers, whether they're selling scientific stuff, or whether they're talking about computers, really intelligent people, and they really can't sell anything. They are absolutely and I've always stood in front of a big crowd of people and used sort of comments like, oh, just ask for the business and this, that, and the other sort of jolly stuff. It's like being trained to play tennis by Djokovic, who says, oh, I won't bother with the backhand, you know that. And topspin, it's a natural, it's second nature. And now, because I'm actually face to face with these people, I find they can't sell for toffee. And literally, I go right back to the good old kind of days of selling skills, the simplest of stuff. And I get a phone call the next day saying, oh, my lads have just taken £3 million worth of business. But just the things they do, are counterproductive, the things they've said to customers, and that has been really good fun. So I'm doing a lot of workshops, a lot of kind of small, intense things. But the big all singing, all dancing conferences, although they're out there, they're not as out there as they were. People are trying to save money.
Yeah, and they're also not in the same room. Let's be honest, Zoom and everything else has
yeah. Well, now before we go on, I will just have a little comment. I do my stuff. I do it on Zoom a lot. I noticed under the new terms and conditions of Zoom that they have a right to the copyright of the Zoom. So if I do a Zoom presentation, I might want to record it and sell it as a product, but there is a possibility that Zoom has the copyright, which is a bit alarming.
I didn't know that at all.
No, nobody does. No, because nobody. We're all a bunch of pillars because we're silly old blokes that smell funny. We all happily use the internet, and we all tick that little box. I agree to the terms and conditions. But have you ever read the terms and conditions? Zoom has a right to your kidneys, to eat your children, to whatever it is. Oh, yeah, tick the box. And you just have a little check of their copyright. I'm not, this is allegedly before they sue me. But actually, a lot of these things have a right to the copyright, or a right to, you're recording this, they have a right to repeat, say this is a Zoom call from Punchline, and put it in one of their adverts. You can't stop them.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll have a good look at that. Thanks ever so much, Geoff.
Yeah.
Neill, just very quickly, you want to come back, and then we have to wrap up because we'll do the pick of the punchlines very quickly. Neill, you wanted to say something about the retail very quickly?
No. I just want. No, it wasn't anything to do with retail. Actually, I just wanted to apologise to Geoff for making that call. But Geoff, you're with the BBC. Is this not, you're taking money from the BBC? This is time. Is there anything you need to tell us before it ends up on the front page?
Oh, I have dark secrets. If you open my cupboard, you'd be buried under skeletons, I tell you. I've stopped the flashing, though, because of the cold weather. I jump out and describe myself now.
I just want to say, when I go on the BBC, I don't get bloody 50 quid. Right.
No, I came as a complete shock. I've never been paid before. It's obviously Radio Gloucester have tied. All the other stations give you a little fee.
Wow.
I think I'll mention that to Radio Gloucester next time.
Someone did ask me once when I was going there a lot. Someone phoned me up and said, do I get paid to go on BBC Radio Gloucestershire? They were really disappointed when I said no. Anyway, right, we're going to do the pick of the punchlines. We're well over time. We're going to start with you, Neill. Neill, what have you picked out from our website today, this week?
Well, I did pick out the FSB because they were talking about rates, but Geoff's already done that. So the next one was, there seems to be a bit of a sea change in who's doing well and who's not doing well. So JD Sports set for £1 billion worth of profit. So tracksuits are on their way up. But DIY is on its way down because B&Q and Screwfix are struggling and have gone the other way and put profit warnings in. So I think the world is changing.
I think so. Okay, thanks very much. Patrick, what have you picked out from the punchline?
Well, I picked that nice little good news thing because there's been a lot of chats about pubs shutting at an alarming rate all around the country. And the Stroud Brewery won the Great British Pub Award, and also for sustainability. So I just thought that's quite nice to see that their tap room actually at the brewery is thriving. So if you get it right, you can still do it.
Well, there you go. I'll tell you what, they do fantastic food as well. I don't know if you great beer. I don't know if you've ever been there. Well worth a visit. Geoff, what have you picked out from Punch? Well,
the thing that you've picked up on and the whole world's picked up on is the interest rates. I'm not sure that this is the start of them going down. Watch November. It wouldn't surprise me if they put that 0.25 up in November when they meet again. It was a close run thing. And I mean, I don't think we've got the best Bank of England team ever anyway. I mean, I think they are a bit of a political appointment. So watch this space. You know, I think the economy is, because I'm a cheery. If I smell flowers, I look for a funeral. I think the economy might be on thin ice at the moment. I'm watching with nerves.
I think you're definitely right there. There's definitely a slowdown amongst different areas of the economy,
but not in the forest.
But not in the forest. It's on the up, apparently. Ian,
I love it. The small person bicycles there, so I'm always driving into the forest, and while I dump him in this muddy wood, I go off and explore all the little towns, and they're bloody magic now. They're so much more exciting than they were 10 years ago.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And that's all we've got time for today. So I'd just like to thank my fantastic panel today. Thanks ever so much for coming along, guys. Thanks also for all of you watching. And I'd like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And we'll be back again next week. So remember, in the meantime, it's all in the punchline. Thanks ever so much. Bye.